Hi there everyone, it's Joe, and before we get started on this deck list, you still have a week to sign up for X-Burst, the first Final Fantasy TCG convention down in Chatham, in the UK obviously. So follow the link in the description box below if you want to attend that. I'll be there next Saturday, it's a definite now, so if you want to come and say hi then feel free, it'd be great to meet some of you guys. Continuing on with the theme that I kind of presented last week with the Mono Air deck, I want to kind of build something that's a mono colour for every colour. And I'm going with Mono Earth this time because it's something that's often requested from me, and Earth is probably the colour that I played most in tournaments. So it'd be an interesting thing to kind of go with. I actually like pairing Earth up with other colours, and but Mono Earth is a very, very solid deck. Although this deck particularly has a little bit of a cheat in it because there is a wind card in it, but you'll see why when we get to it. Anyways, let's get stuck straight in. So we're starting with the forwards first of all, and one of the cores of this deck are the WRO members. Now, the WRO members was something I completely glossed over when Opus 3 came out, and I think a lot of people did, because it's one of those standard unit looking guys. We've kind of been there and done that with the standard units. Everyone's tried to make it work and it not be that great. These guys are actually really, really good. Like, if you do have to kind of build up to get to the point where they're amazing, but once you do, they're a very, very big force to be reckoned with. And the 2-drop WRO member forward is just a very, very, valuable card. It's on curve on its own at 6k power for 2 CP, but if you have another WRO member out, whether that be the backup or the forward, and the fact that one of them being a backup, if Unoriku Pain taught us anything, it's that's actually better than it sounds, then he gets plus 1k in Brave. So that's cool. And so he's a 7k Brave attacker for 2, which is already incredible value. Factor in a Crow into that and you have an 8k Brave attacker for 2 CP. That's Guy, and he's 4 CP, so that's the thing. Then if you manage to get WRO Commander out, who we'll just focus on now, you end up with a 2 CP 10k Brave attacker. That's crazy. It's really, really powerful, and it being a 2 CP unit and a standard unit, meaning it synergizes with things like Ingus and Jesse, it's a FF7, it just actually, it makes a lot of sense in this deck to build something around something that has just so many synergies all at once, because you're never not going to want this card in your hand. And the WRO Commander himself is, a 7k attacker for 3 CP and gets slightly bigger if you have Vincent out. And if you're playing Earth, you're going to be playing Vincent, you just are, he's very, very good. And he obviously boosts the other WRO members up very, very well, and the WRO member backup makes it so that it's harder for him to kill him, so they do all synergize very, very well. It's one of those things that doesn't look like much on paper, but if you put it into practice you will see yourself just how powerful this little kind of synergistic triptych gets, and it's really scary really fast. And then coming to Vincent, who is just good. He's just straight up good. He can't be killed by card effects. He's on curve at 8k power for 4 CP. Earth has a lot of really good 4 CP cards, like kind of too many. And trying to make a curve is quite difficult because a lot of their better cards are all 4 CP. So you kind of have to go with a particular branch, and I've gone here to go and focus on Vincent and the WRO members as much as possible. You can do lots of different things. I won't dwell too much on Vincent because everyone knows how good he is. You can read the card and just say how good he is. Death penalty is going to get you out of a lot of sticky situations very quickly. End of story. And then I think that this particular point in the deck is actually very malleable, but I really like Opus 3 Scarmiglione. I think it's really, really good. It's another 2 CP 6k backup forward words that really wants to be blocked, because it can take out things so much bigger than it, and it's a great card for playing mind games with your opponent with the S ability, because if he dies and comes back he deals additional damage, so he can take things out much, much bigger than him, as long as there's not a Minwoo on the board, but we have Hecatonkai for that. Or even spread his damage around if he wants to, and if you have an Crow out, then even better. If there's just a lot of cheeky little plays you can make with him. And I'm running 3 of the Opus 3 Scarmiglione and 1 of the other one, which we'll get to when we get to it in the deck list, purely because I want the consistency to have 4. You could run Seraphy in this slot because she's still a very, very good card. I actually really like Seraphy and Scarmiglione together because Seraphy fuels S abilities, that's what she's there for. But there's a lot of different 2 CP units you could run here if you wanted to. I chose to run Scarm. Ingus is an absolute star in this deck. It can drop you, one of the best things to read on Ingus is the fact that he can drop any 2 CP standard unit or less. That's backup or forward. Your WRO members are backup, are standard units, which means that you can drop them down. You have Monk, you have Machinist, there's loads of things that you can just go, yep, plop, plop, done. and he's just one of the best turn 1 plays you can get, because it's just a massive board. Well, not massive, but he's like a very, very large board for that sort of point in the game. And he's never bad either, because obviously Earth's backups have a tendency to break themselves. You can just keep playing them down again by, without losing the momentum. It's very, very good. There's 2 guy in here because he's an above average value unit for 4 CP, having Brave, and he's a really good meta call against Ice. Now, Ice was very, very prominent over the past couple of weeks, and a lot of people use the new Shiva, a lot of people use Genesis, and Guy is a straight hard counter to those, so I think that any Earth deck should be running at least 1 of him, but I think because of his value, I really like having 2 of him in this deck, because this deck is all about just above average value in units. And then we've gone with 2 copies of both deleters here. This is a little kind of controversial, I guess. Like, you could, play around with this as much as you wanted to. I think that the 3-drop deleter is still very important to Earth decks. Shantotto is an extremely valuable unit now. She's actually very valuable money-wise now as well, for some reason. Like, she's always been this good. When did everyone wake up and smell the coffee? But now apparently she's really expensive. But deleter allows you to play her again if you wanted to, or at least present the threat that you're going to play her again. It allows you to repeat Raban. It allows you to, there's a lot of things. You could trigger a Scarmiglione if you wanted to. It'll cost you extra, but you won't lose much out of it. And if you have that deleter out, he has Ness ability, which is actually better than it sounds. So if you have the other one in hand and you don't want to use it, you can just attack, and you can attack with the deleter and use that as the S fodder to break something that's blocking him so that he takes no damage. And that's really solid as well. But obviously the 5-drop deleter is very powerful as well. So I went with 2 of both copies because I think that they're good at different points in the game. And much like Aerith in my last deck list, I think that because one of them has an S ability, you kind of are allowed to have one that suits the situation. But you're welcome to change that and suit that however you see fit. And then the last 2 slots for Earth are just S fodder, basically. Like, the Scarmiglione is there is for the Opus 3 one, and the Promo Vincent is there for the 4-drop one. There's not really any reason why you would play the Promo Vincent, because you'd much rather just have the 4-drop one out. However, the 2-drop Scarmiglione from Opus 2, they're both 2-drops, I don't know why I'm saying that. The Opus 2 Scarmiglione has its uses. You can, the back attack is unique to Scarmiglione as of this point in the game. There might be more coming out in Opus 4, we don't know. But, as of right now, he's the only unit in the game that has it, and it's basically Flash from Magic. You can play it at any time you could play anything, like any abilities or anything like that. So your opponent attacks with you with something, you can, thinking that you're wide open and they can go for game, you can just go, no, block with it, and then you have one more unit than they thought you had. And that is an invaluable thing to do in this game, because mind games actually play a lot in Final Fantasy, and it makes a huge difference. And then the last 2 forwards in here, we have a Yuffie, who is Wind, but she's free if you have a Vincent out. And because Vincent is a prominent part of this deck, you have Jessie to search for it, WRO Commander benefits from it. I thought it would be quite nice to run a Yuffie to make Vincent an even more valuable forward than he usually is. And free forwards are a really good thing anyway. So, I mean, you also have the ability to search her with Jessie, which is a part of the reason why I'm running more than 1 copy of her, which we'll get to when we get to the backups. But basically, you could change this if you wanted to, but I quite like having 1 of it in there. A lot of the more expensive cards in this deck, it's not going to matter if you have 1 Wind card, because you can pay, as long as you're paying at least 1 Earth CP for a card, you're still going to be able to play it, so it doesn't really matter. And then lastly, a Feral Chaos, much for the same reason as 3-drop deleter. Feral Chaos is also very, very good for clinching a game out, like just going, oh, I've got 1 more guy bigger than you. Same reason as a 2-drop Scarmiglione from Opus 2. I keep saying 2-drop and I don't know why. Feral Chaos just smacks your opponent in the head, like when they're not expecting it. And just 1 of it I really like. And in a lot of monocolored decks that require backups that you want to use multiple times, I really like Feral Chaos, and having him alongside deleter actually makes a lot of sense. Feral Chaos also allows you to clean the deleter that you've used away so that you can play the 5-drop one if you want to. It's a bit messy, but it does work. It's one of those things, as I said, it sounds a bit strange on paper, but if you put it into practice, you'll see what I mean. Now, the backups for Earth are where a lot of its meat lies. Don't get me wrong, things like Vincent and the WRO Members are very, very powerful, but Earth's backups are second to none. They have some of the best ones in the game. And Enocro, is the same as every other power booster in this game. You know, you're just gonna run 3 of it in a monocolored deck because it just makes sense. You want to have your WRO members be 10,000 rather than 9. You want your Vincents to be potentially 10,000 rather than 8 if you have Yuffie and her out. It just makes sense. And then Monk, I honestly think is one of the best backups in the game because it's a monk that it's a backup that can clear itself from your back row, allowing you to play others while presenting you with an extremely potent offensive and defensive effect. You know, just getting 3,000 power is the main reason that you have it. You don't like the Brave is nice, but because you're not forced to use it during your main phase, you can use it in response to your opponent blocking or your forward being blocked, which means that you're going to win the majority of combat because 3k is that just large enough margin that you'll take almost anything out. And obviously if in emergencies you have access to Golem and things like that as well, so you know, Earth will often win the combat trick war. So I think that playing to that strength is definitely a boost to the deck. And then WRO member, because you kind of want it there just as the name for the forward WRO member, but it also does protect the commander, which can present problems for a lot of decks more than you'd think. Like, Al Cid doesn't like this card very much because you're expending a lot of resources to try and kill something that might not die. And it's something that you're going to want to target first, because if you're spending Al Cid and Onion Knight or Rigdia on a 2-drop WRO member rather than the commander that's boosting it, it's just not as valuable. So you'd be surprised how often the backup's ability actually comes into effect. And then we come to Shantotto, who, as I said, is one of the most expensive cards in the game right now, and that's for very good reason. She's just a staple. If you're even splashing Earth, you play this card. She's the only card in the game that effectively cleans the board. Ultima, it just doesn't quite cut it in comparison to Shantotto. Shantotto is just, she's a backup, so she's still building you with resources, and she's going to board wide. Honestly, I know that there's a Shantotto coming out on Opus 4, but quite frankly, unless a Shantotto comes around that's absolutely stellar, has to be in every Earth deck, I don't see how it will ever see play over this card, because she's that damn good. And then 2 copies of Raoban, who I only go with 2 copies of Raoban and not 3, because a lot of people like Raoban, and he is very, very good, but Aerith is becoming more and more popular. So if you've got your opponent has an Aerith down, your Raoban isn't going to do an awful lot. That being said, he's still a very, very good removal piece. The whole point of this deck is to make sure that your forwards are bigger than theirs and that you always win the combat wars. So the stronger your forwards are, the stronger Raoban is. So it makes sense to at least have him in the deck. And then 2 copies of Machinist, and this is mainly because I wanted another standard unit target for Ingus, but you know, having played Machinist, he's actually very good, like, because Earth doesn't have an awful lot in the way of removal that isn't damage based. You have Vincent and you have Machinist and you have Shantotto, and that's, you know, that's really solid. Machinist is quite heavily costed, but it's a kill spit. It's an Odin that you can save for later. Like, you can use it in response to your opponent attacking you with something that's 4 CP or less. It can save you, and it is something that can remove itself in order to make room for cards like Enecro, Raban, and Shantotto, which is just a plus, and I really like them. And then the last 3 slots for the backups are all searches. So you can run this in any order you wish. I went with 2 Jessie and 1 Rydia, because I think there's enough FF7 forwards in this deck to benefit from Jessie being there twice rather than Rydia. However, Earth has a really nice summon suite that we'll get to in just a second that Rydia can take great advantage of. So honestly, 2 and 1, 1 and 2, just make sure you're running at least one of both of them because they're integral to this kind of deck. And then the summons in this deck are actually pretty nice. Like, I always used to complain about the summons in Earth for a while because they were all just too defensive, but I think Atomos just kind of gave you that extra, and it helped a great deal. And I apologise for that terrible tongue pop. So we start with Golem. Golem is just a very, very strong card in general. It always allows your opponent the pause to think, oh, can I actually win this combat? And in a game like this, where combat is the only real way to push the game forward, you want to make sure that your combat is going to be stronger than your opponent's, and Golem does that for you. And if you're blocking, even better. Titan I really, really like, actually. I never used to, but I've grown very, very fond of it. It's a really good way of, like, Vincent is hard enough to kill as it is, for example. But he can die to damage-based effects, such as the Al Cid combo. If you have a Titan in hand, and they're going to waste it on nothing, and it's great, because they've got 2 guys that's now smaller than Vincent that did nothing to him, and if your opponent's playing Lightning, Odin's not going to do anything to Vincent. They've got an Al Cid on the board now, so they can't play another one to try and kill him again. So that's just one really good example of why Titan is very, very strong. Titan actually made me consider running Minerva over Feral Chaos in this deck because, you know, Minerva's really, really good so long as you can keep her alive, because she's going to paint a dirty grey crosshair target on her forehead to say, please kill me, or please do something to me. But Water's relevance in the meta at the moment with Leviathan and effects that aren't going to kill her made me think otherwise and went with Feral Chaos instead. But that being said, Titan's just very, very solid. Hecaton Kyra is actually the first summon that you'd probably think about not playing in this deck anymore because, you know, backup destruction just isn't that big a deal anymore. It was when Opus 1 was the thing because there was a lot of backup destruction. Well, it was the only set that really had backup destruction through Archer and Hecaton and Sephiroth. But as the game's progressed, backup destruction just become less and less prominent. But you kind of want to have answers to things that are going to get in your way, like, you know, the ever-mentioned Minwoo, Aerith, if you don't like the fact that, you know, you want to be able to use a Raban and you can't. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to have Hecaton here, but you would feel free to not play it and play more copies of Golem or Titan, or you could play Carbuncle. I don't particularly like Carbuncle, but, you know, a lot of people do. And then lastly, we've gone with 2 copies of Atomos because it's a straight up damage based, you know, kill spell. And, you know, for this, it does exactly the same thing as Raban, realistically. It's worded slightly differently, but it ends in, it's the different means to the same end. But the fact of the matter is this deck is all about my guy's bigger than yours, and Atomos capitalizes on that, so it makes sense to run 2 of him as well. So that's the end of this video, and before I go, I will say I've got some interesting things happening this weekend, which I will tell you about as the weekend passes. To be fair, a lot of you will probably end up finding out about it pretty quickly. But I really want to kind of develop my YouTube channel and kind of diversify what I'm doing a bit. I really, really enjoy Final Fantasy TCG and have done since I've started playing it. You know, I'm still making the videos for it, and I really love supporting the game and, you know, doing my best to try and inform you guys about things to do. But I do a lot of different things. Like, I've been uploading videos on my drawings and my artwork, like, sporadically for a little while, but it doesn't obviously get as much views as it, you know, as some of my other videos do. And that makes sense because you guys often come here to come and see the Final Fantasy video. But if there's anything else that you would like to watch me do, that you are aware of things I do, like maybe vlogging is something I've been interested in taking up. Like when I travel to tournaments, I'm going to have a lot more free time to do that soon. You know, whether my artwork is something you want to see more of, or anything else that you'd like to know, then leave a comment in the comments below and just let me know what you think, because you guys' contact keeps me going making these videos and it means the world to me. So if you haven't already, then please subscribe to the channel and put a thumbs up on this video and any others that you may have seen. And as I said, don't forget about Experts next week, and hopefully I'll see some of you guys there, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.